Well, I'm Bill Kanengiser, and I'm on the guitar faculty at USC Thornton School of Music. And I actually started as a student here in 1977, and I went right from being a student to being part-time faculty and then faculty. So this is my 30th year continuously at USC, and it's been a great experience for me. Not only did I get to meet Pepe Romero, who's kind of my guitar guru, essentially, who, taught me everything I needed to know about guitar, but I also met 3 other guitar playing guys and in a little class we had called Guitar Ensemble. We formed a little quartet, and we ended up calling ourselves the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet, and 12, 15 albums later and 1 Grammy later, we're still playing together after 27 years. So it's been quite a life-changing experience to be here at USC. And I was going to play a little tune for you. This is written by a buddy of mine who's on the faculty here at USC in guitar and composition. His name's Brian Head, and it's a tune he wrote called The Lobster Tale. Well, the big thing about classical guitar is you're essentially like functioning as a one-man band. You're your own bass player, accompanist, melody guy, and so the way the right hand works, the thumb sort of will frequently play the bass line, the fingers will play the melody and inside fingers. So you have to develop a sort of independence of the right hand, and the more you get into it, you start to discover voicings, like how to bring out individual voices, and we start to modulate the color that we make by the way that you pluck. And if you, the most basic thing is if you pluck closer to the bridge, it's a brighter sound, and if you pluck this way, it's a darker sound. But there's all kinds of different ways to modulate it. Like if I pluck up versus down, I can adjust various things, and you start working on dynamics and articulation, short and long notes, and there's all kinds of different ways to work with the sound. But I think it's frequently referred to as one of the most intimate instruments because the fingertip of the player is in direct contact with the thing that's making the sound, on both hands, and as opposed to a piano where there's a mechanism in between, or something separating the musician from the actual making of the sound. So it makes it very delicate and easy to screw up, but it's got that sort of intimacy that I think touches us. I think I'm a player who teaches, because for me my approach as a teacher is to try to, as was my example with Pepe Romero, to try to teach by example. It's like, I'm trying to get out there doing this. I'm trying to get in front of an audience and play. I'm trying to make records, and these are the steps that I went through to get to this point, and I'll try to help you to do the same thing. And I love teaching, and I feel very blessed to have some really talented, focused, ambitious students here. But for me, it's my life as a musician really revolves around getting up in front of an audience and sharing what I have to share musically. To me, that completes the circle for me. Definitely. I think the guitar, the classical guitar, is such an incredibly small niche market. There's virtually no opportunities for any classical guitarists. I mean, and you can't look in the newspaper and see in the classified section wanted classical guitarist. And we don't even have access to symphony orchestra positions, and there are some teaching positions, but they're few and far between. So anyone who's going to make a living as a classical guitarist has to create a market for themselves. They have to create a reason for someone to want to hire them, and a reason for someone to ask them to teach or do whatever. So to some extent, I learned early on that I had to bring something to my music making that made it, this maybe sounds distasteful, made it marketable, and still trying to keep my artistic integrity, but there has to be a reason for someone to ask me to come and play. And so in that way, I think I am somewhat of an entrepreneur, and the way that the LA Guitar Quartet's career has developed, starting out as a very traditional chamber music group and branching out into world music and jazz and kind of what they call classical crossover. It may seem like a very calculated thing. I hope that anything that I've done or the quartet has done to create opportunities has been because of our sort of creative curiosity. We've gone into areas that have always fascinated us and noticed that they're marketable. I think sometimes when artists cross over and it's done in a sort of pandering way, or if their true belief isn't behind it, audiences can see through it. It just doesn't ring true. And one thing about the guitar, it's a really great crossover instrument, because guitar exists in all these forms, in rock and jazz and world music. It's part of so many different musical cultures. So it does really lend itself to breaking molds and going in different directions. The quartet has a manager, but our manager is really more like a booking agent. They handle, getting us jobs and helping arrange things, but all the day-to-day, minutia of running this group, it's really kind of falls on me. And it's a labor of love. I'm a bit of a control freak about it, and I drive the guys crazy. But they pretty much accept the fact that we probably wouldn't be where we are career-wise if I hadn't been, stoking the fires for all these years. I think you have to know something about the music business. If you could be the greatest musician in the world, and if you sit in your little practice room by yourself and no one knows about you, you're never going to go anywhere. Now, I think it takes equal measures of ambition, talent, drive, and luck. If you don't have the talent, then the drive and ambition can be a really bad thing. You've got to do the work. You've got to have something to offer. But you also have to understand, that it is a business, and you have to, however you do it, whatever the most natural way for you to do it, you have to get out there, and you have to want to share what you have created. Well, when I've done now at least a dozen recordings with the quartet. I've done 4 solo records. I've been on a bunch of other projects with other people and done some film score work and things like that. When I first started doing it, it was terrifying. There's that red light fever that kicks in where, suddenly they go, and you become so hyper aware of every little tiny thing. And it's, the more I've done it though, the more comfortable I felt and the more that I've been able to feel that, okay, I'm in my element and, I know what I want to do. And also knowing a little bit about the post-production process. I've actually done some editing and producing work. I did all the editing on my solo albums, and I learned, well, without cheating, with editing you can create the performance that you envision in your mind, But I guess the interesting thing that I've discovered is it's really easy to not see the forest for the trees when you're recording. You tend to focus on all the little details, like, oh, I buzzed that note, or oh, that was a little slow, or whatever. And what you might miss is, well, the groove of the whole thing isn't there, or the arc of the piece. The large scale thing is really hard to see when you're doing it, and that's the trick, I think, to be able to see the small details, but the large overall picture, and just have your artistic vision come out. I guess I do a lot of different things, because I have a solo career and a career with the quartet, and I teach, here at USC, and I have a wife and daughter, and try to be involved in some other things. I'm actually on the board of directors of the Guitar Foundation of America, and I don't think of myself as being completely stressed out and overly busy all the time. I guess I tend to compartmentalize pretty well, or multitask pretty well. But every once in a while it catches up with me. I just played at the Guitar Foundation of America convention, and I was on the jury for the competition for 3 days, and I had to go to board meetings, and I was driving my daughter to school in the morning, and I was rehearsing this new concerto, and when I got up on stage to play my solo concert at the end of the week, I was like, how does this stuff go again? So I think that one caught up with me a little bit. But for the most part, I just try to, I guess I've always been really good at knowing what my deadlines are. In fact, I do really well with deadlines, and I'm terrible if I don't have a deadline. Like, for me, if I didn't have any gigs at all, I wouldn't kind of know what to do with myself. It's like, well, what am I supposed to practice for exactly? But it's like, well, I have to practice this piece because I have to play it in 2 weeks. And I think setting goals for myself and setting deadlines for myself, it gives me something tangible and concrete. And I do have a sense of what I need to do to be prepared, to be comfortable stepping on stage or coming to teach. I think for me, it's a mysterious thing. I mean, neither of my parents or my brothers play professionally. I was never sort of forced into playing. It was just something I heard a lot of great music when I was growing up because my parents were music lovers. Heard a lot of jazz, a lot of classical music. A little Segovia here and there. But I just was always fascinated with the guitar. The minute I saw one, I was like, wow. I still remember when I was about 5 years old, my dad made me a stand-up bass out of rubber bands and a cigar box and a broomstick, and I came out and did a little recital on it. I had no idea what I was doing, but the idea of plucking something, just was fascinating to me. And as embarrassing as it is, I've never really played any other instrument at all. I had to take a year of piano when I was a freshman at USC, and I was horrible. My nails clicked on the keys, and I can't play any other instrument. But I'm good at this one, and it's just always been my love. And I'm really into the sound of it. The way you can modulate the sound of it, and all the different styles you can do. And it's just always been my way of expressing myself musically. Pepe Romero is really, probably the most important figure for me, because he represented just the pinnacle of artistic and technical achievement, and amazing player, amazing person, very spiritual person. But also the way his career developed, it's something I've sort of tried to mimic in a way. He has a huge solo career, and then this great career with his guitar quartet, with originally his father and his two brothers, the Romero's guitar quartet. And so I really tried to follow in his footsteps, to have my own modest solo career and then the quartet doing what it's doing. But I actually have a lot of musical heroes that aren't classical guitarists. Actually, my quartet did a record about 3 or 4 years ago called Guitar Heroes, which incidentally won a Grammy. But the whole point of that record was for us to pay tribute to the guitar players that were really important to us. And only 2 or 3 of them are classical guitarists. They're like, one guy that I had to put on there for me was Steve Howe from the rock group Yes. He was just the greatest thing to me when I was in high school. So I arranged one of his songs for the 4 of us. But we have pieces by Chet Atkins, by Pat Metheny, Frank Zappa, the Romeros, of course, but all different styles, running the gamut. But there's so many great artists that aren't necessarily classical guys that really had a deep impact on me. Ralph Towner, another one. Yeah, I used to practice a lot when I was a student. I used to practice hours and hours, and the busier I am, the less time I have to practice. And when my daughter was born, I thought, oh well, gee, here goes, there goes all the practice time I have now, And the funny thing is that kind of change in my life made me practice much less, but my playing improved. And I think I got much more focused. Like when I sit down to practice, I kind of have this idea that, okay, I know I've only got a limited amount of time, and I just go right to the thing I need to work on. And I spend a lot less time just sort of screwing around and sort of, half paying attention to what I'm doing. It's like I'm really focused when I know what I need to do. And the funny thing is, I've been playing the guitar now for a long time, like close to 40 years now, and I'm still discovering things about how my hands are supposed to work. I'm still changing little details and how my nails come across and the angle, and I'm trying to be aware of how my hands work and how they feel. I'm very sensitive to the issue of hand problems because I've seen a lot of people get them, and so I try all the time to feel like that the ergonomics are working well, and I have this thing I say, I want to have happy hands, because if, I think the no pain, no gain thing doesn't work for guitar. I think if you have pain, there's something wrong, you shouldn't have pain, so I'm trying to be aware of the way my body is, the way my hands are, and just try to concentrate when I'm doing something. Yeah. Right now, what I've been working on is some subtle, really subtle things about my right hand and about tone and touch and balance. But I'm always trying to work on concentration. That seems to be the bugaboo, And it's one thing that you never know for sure that you have, I guess, when I think about how well a certain performance comes out, there's like 3 variables basically. It's like what your experience is, what your preparation is, and then what your attitude is at that moment. And my experience is what it is, and I can rely on that. And then my preparation for that event depends on how much time I had to practice and everything. But my attitude at that moment, that's the variable that you never know. That is your concentration going to be focused? Are you going to be in a good mood? Are you going to be in a good mood and feeling the moment, or are you going to feel freaked out or nervous or bored or tired? Those are the things. That's the thing you can't control, and you never know. And so the more you do it, the less variable that becomes. The more you can count on the fact that I'm going to be okay. But you never know. And it's from night to night. It's a different experience. Well, I mean, there's very specific, physiological kinesthetic things, for instance, if a player has like a severely bent wrist, if you just hold your hands out straight with your wrists flat and you make a fist, you see what it feels like. And if you just bend your wrists and make a fist, you can instantly feel, oh, those tendons are pulled already. They're at their extreme of the range of motion, so that's just going to create friction and heat and before you know it, you get tendonitis or carpal tunnel or focal dystonia. But it's actually, it's more complicated than just that. I think, posture, sitting position is important. A lot of guitar players have this thing with the right shoulder thrust up and the back turned like that, or the head thrust forward, to try to see the guitar. And, I think, having a comfortable, balanced sitting position is, really important. And breathing, I found breathing is really important to staying alive, actually. If you don't breathe, you tend to die. So breathing is important too when you're playing. For me, it's part of, I'm not a singer, I'm not a wind player, so I don't actually have to coordinate my breath with what I'm doing musically, but I find that the way that I feel my phrases and the way that I prepare beats, it has to do with the way I'm moving physically, which is part of breath. And I think musical expression, musical phrasing is tied into speech and vocal technique. And so if I'm real nervous and my breath is real shallow and short, I find that my expression doesn't come out quite as well, and I tend to tighten up. So when I do get a chance to focus before I perform, I'll do slow breath, watching my breath and trying to slow down the heartbeat. And this is all stuff that Pepe talks about. That it's something I got from him. It's a sort of a yogic idea about how to approach the instrument. Well, all of the students at USC are advanced classical guitarists who are serious about what they do. I mean, that being said, there's a pretty wide gamut of skill levels. I mean, we've got some folks who are relative newcomers in that they wouldn't feel too comfortable getting up in front of a big crowd and playing a whole recital right now. They're not ready for that. But we've got some kids who have won international competitions, and they're playing amazing stuff. And some of the students, I get nervous when I have to teach them. I'm like, gee, what am I going to say? Or they'll play something and I'll say, how do you do that? So it does run the gamut. But hopefully, I try to give everybody some kind of a helpful advice. And really, Pepe was a great inspiration for me about how to teach. His whole attitude about teaching was he had no interest in being the maestro who is who tells everybody what to do. He would never say, you have to play the way I play. His whole thing was find the way that comes out find your own natural creativity and bring it out. He had no interest in people just imitating him. And I remember years ago he told me, he said, Bill, you cannot be a little Pepe. You have to be a big Bill Kanengiser, And so his idea was, don't try to just emulate your teacher, learn from them, but then you have to become yourself. You have to discover what it is that you do. And that's interesting to people. There are some things everybody has to work on. You have to work on technique. You have to, understand music. But then at some point, once you get to a certain skill level, then you have to have people try to discover what it is that resonates with them. What is it that really speaks to them deep down and that they feel enthusiastic about and they feel natural with. And you never know, it's a very subtle thing, but when someone discovers it, you can feel it. So, I'm still searching, I guess. Yeah. Pepe instilled that in all of us, the idea that we're here on Pepe views the artist as almost like a sacred quest, that we have a role in society, that we're here to take music on a page and bring it to life and ennoble the audience by that process, and hopefully earn a living while we're doing it. So but it is different for everybody. I think people have different motivations for why they come to an instrument. It's not always, I think, such a high art kind of process for everybody. But my job, I think, is just to try to bring out whatever is best about the student's potential and have them discover it. I think sometimes it's said that a doctoral student learns more and more about less and less until they know everything about nothing, you know? I mean, there is that danger, you know, that you become so focused on one little thing. And if anything, my experience has been that all of the different music that I loved when I was in high school is music that I've turned back to, you know, 25 years later and readapted through classical guitar, you know. And, you know, I'm playing flamenco and jazz and Cuban music and, you know, Japanese folk music, but on classical guitar. And so if I had been very narrow and only studied classical guitar, traditional repertoire, I would not have that to draw upon. So, and of course, you know, being inspired by art and literature and the world around us, that's part of being a human being too, and you're expressing universal human emotion. That's part of music. For me, the physicality of playing is really important. I think that being aware of the way that the hands naturally work is very important. And I think some teachers tend to have their students develop by pushing them harder than they think they can go, like pushing the envelope. And that is one way to get students to improve, but it also can be technically damaging. And so I try to operate with the students from a real solid base of technical foundation and then build on it. Like, I think that you shouldn't push a student harder than they can go right now, you know. So I tend to be kind of careful with people and not let them make mistakes that it's going to take them years to unlearn. I have a lot of different things on my iPod. I've got about 38 gig on there right now, so it'll be a little hard to tell you the whole list. But I actually have a lot of jazz on there. When I listen to music just for relaxation, I seem to always go to Miles Davis, you know. And what also happens, what's happening to me is a very common thing that, you know, when you get to a certain age, you tend to really want to hear the music you heard when you were in high school. I don't know what that is. So I just got the complete remastered Steely Dan, you know, and I'm just totally digging rediscovering all that stuff because I loved that when I was growing up. And of course, Yes, and Joni Mitchell and that kind of thing. So that's what I listen to most just for fun. I remember Pepe a long time ago when I first started. He said, the greatest guitarist makes about as much money as a mediocre doctor. So don't do it for the money, you know. And so, but he said, if you have to do it, you must do it. And so it's the reason to do it is because you just can't see yourself doing anything else. And you know, I guess I kind of lucked out. I didn't expect that I would actually be a touring, concertizing, solo guitarist. But I knew when I went into this that I wanted to do something that had to do with music in some way. It was like working in a music store or editing music or, you know, doing arrangements or teaching or, you know, and it turned out that it worked out very nicely for me. But I just wanted to be in music in some way, and that was my goal. Well, it's tough. I mean, my mom was, you know, my dad was very supportive. My mom was worried because, you know, I was good at school. You know, I was a straight A student, and it was sort of like, well, you could be a lawyer, you know, you could be a doctor or something. It should hurt. You could be a doctor, and then you could learn the guitar. I mean, it would be all right. You know. But they were very, very sweet about it. They said, well, just give it a shot, you know, and see how you do. And the feeling was, well, if I give it my best shot, and I'll know at a certain point whether I really don't have what it takes, and I'll change directions and I'll adapt, you know. But I just decided to go for it and give it a shot. I see myself doing kind of what I'm doing right now. I have to say I'm very happy with the balance in my life right now. I'd like to see the quartet keep thriving and doing more interesting recording projects and maybe some collaborative things with interesting artists. I've got a solo record in my mind that I've put on the back burner for about 3 years because I've been too busy with quartet things, and I really want to do that. I'm doing like sort of a fingerstyle guitar project, doing some steel string stuff, Michael Hedges style, you know. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with the way things are going. I just want to keep doing it. This is a guitar built by Thomas Humphrey. He's an American guitar builder, and it's unusual in that the top is not parallel to the fretboard. It's at kind of an angle, so it gives it a little more volume and a little warmer sound. He calls this style a millennium guitar. It's his little name for it, and this one happened to be built in 2000, so it's a 2000 millennium. But it just has what I would consider a really nice balanced sound, but a warm, full, rich sound, which is hard to get on classical guitars. Sometimes they tend to be either boomy in the bass and thin on top, or some other parameter. And this one seems to have a lot of the qualities that I was looking for. And it's easier to play in the upper range because of the neck. So that helps with the quartet, because I play a lot of the sort of high stuff. Well, I mean, the most striking difference is the top, the angle of the top. The bracing, it's what they call a lattice bracing, which is a cross bracing underneath, as opposed to more traditional fan bracing, like the old Torres and Hauser guitars. But it's not that revolutionary. It's just happens to be a real nice one. I only own 3 guitars, because I don't have room in the house to store all these things. I guess the thing that I try to tell them is what I try to do for myself, is I try to make most of my musical decisions without the guitar. I try to imagine the sound that I want, and I try to play through pieces in my mind and sort of create an idealized version of how I'd like it to go. And then when I come to the guitar, I can see the difference between where I am and where I want to be. That's different from just playing and then listening to it and saying, well, no, that's not what I want. Oh, no, that's not what I want. So I think it saves time, it saves effort, but also it makes you more concentrated on what it is that you want to do with the piece. So I think, students get a little freaked out about auditions because, they don't know what the expectation is. They don't know what, what baggage the people listening are going to have, like what philosophy or technical school they come from. I know from our perspective, when we listen to a new student, we just want to hear that someone is clearly functional on the instrument, and they're expressive, and they're saying something musically, and that they look comfortable. And I think students get all freaked out about, I have to play this piece because this is the kind of piece they want to hear, and a lot of students try to play pieces that are too hard, and they end up stumbling because they're going a little over their heads. And sometimes we have students come in and they play a very simple piece, but with beautiful tone and nice phrasing, and we go, wow, that's great. I love this guy, and it's pretty interesting. I think, getting back to, well, what is it that I want to say on the instrument? What do I feel good about getting up on stage? Maybe the aesthetic should be any piece that you'd want to sit down and play for your grandmother would be the piece that you want to play in an audition. Something that's nice, that you feel comfortable with, and it's going to make her happy. It's probably going to make the teachers happy too. Oh yeah. She's tough. She's a tough critic, because she knows every note of every piece like the back of her hand. She doesn't play, but she knows it. And so if she hears me in concert, if I make the tiniest little glitch, she'll missed that. So she's tough.
Could you play something out for us that you might play for your daughter?
What would I play for her? Let's see. This is a piece called the Afro-Cuban Lullaby. Thank you.